All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We really appreciate you joining us. My name is Will Devlin. I'm the VP of Marketing at MessageGears, and we're serving as hosts of today's webinar, The Economic Impact of a Modern Data Infrastructure. We'll be led today by James Reisman, Principal at MarTech Review, and Tarun Batra, who's CEO of LumenData. James and Tarun have studied the costs and the financial benefits across large organizations and are going to be providing an in-depth examination of the findings. You'll notice in the handout section, there's a copy of the research and the white paper that you can take with you. We'll also be in the chat section, you'll see a link to an ROI model that James has put together. So we'll also send those things to you after the webinar is finished, but wanted to make sure you are aware of those resources here. Today's webinar is going to run about 30 minutes, and as we go through this, and as James and Tarun walk us through what their findings are, please use the questions function over in go to webinar here, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to James.
Thanks, Will. Hi, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. I'm James Reisman with MarTech Review. MarTech Review focuses on the intersection of marketing with analytics and big data. We've helped several clients with marketing analytics projects as well as customer data platform projects, working with technology solutions like segments, heap analytics, and Mixpanel. This work has brought us close to cloud data infrastructure teams in that capacity. So we also help companies with MarTech strategic technology assessments, as well as vendor recommendations about the technologies they should use. So I'm happy to announce that we're expanding this service to cloud data infrastructures to help with strategic assessments in that area with the help of partners like LumenData. With that, I'd like to turn over to Tarun.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. My name is Tarun Batra. I am the CEO of LumenData. We are a consulting services company focused in the enterprise data management space. And one of our big focuses is the implementation of cloud data warehouses with the advent of people moving to the cloud, data moving to the cloud. We are a specialized provider in that space. We've been in business for about 12 years, and we have worked with many large customers and small customers, companies like Starbucks, Prudential, Citi, Univision. We do a lot of work with the federal government as well in this space. And we are excited to show you some of our capabilities. And as you are making decisions around cloud data warehouses, what are some of the things you should be considering before you begin this journey? Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. So before we get started, just to give you an overview of what the modern data infrastructure overview area looks like, it's pretty much cloud-based, and the setup is very easy because everything is provisioned for you in the cloud. There's no hardware, there's no software installation, there's no provisioning required, and it's a very much a pay-as-you-go model, which is basically saying that you pay for what you use. You can store your data in there, and there is a storage cost associated with that, which is quite low. But when you do actually analytics or do some analysis and load data in there, and you do computation, you get charged only for the time that you use it for. So it's a very much a scale-up, scale-down model based on your needs, and you can really start new initiatives very quickly because you can just turn it on, load data in there, build your cloud data lake or cloud data warehouse, and get going. And this is both a good benefit for business as well as IT because there's no management overhead. The lead time is reduced significantly, and you can get off the gate faster to start your initiatives. Next slide. I'm sure many of you have data warehouses. They've been quite popular and have been around for 20 plus years. Companies have built these over years by loading data from many different applications or databases. There's a lot of data migration work using ETL technologies. There's a lot of capacity planning that needs to be done because data is coming from many sources. New business users are asking for new information. They're looking for more ways to analyze data. And so the management overhead increases with that because you have to plan for capacity. You have to provision software as well as hardware, which is costly. And some companies tend to over provision because if in order to meet the demand, they want to over provision, so they're not scrambling at the last minute. There's a lot of tuning work that needs to be done. There's a lot of different kinds of programming languages that are used to load the data. So in essence, while they have been good use to many companies, they are now running out of their use as cloud comes into play, and a lot of these overhead and maintenance and areas like that are going away because of that. Next slide, please. Modern cloud data warehouses are very, very flexible. You can scale storage separately, you can scale compute separately, and it all depends on the workload requirements. And many customers that we work with like the low cost separation of storage from compute because storage is generally cheaper, compute is expensive. So if you can manage your compute as you need, you can definitely save a lot of money, and it's very cost effective. Scalability is something that is very key because it can scale on demand. Administration overhead is gone, and there is good performance because compute is separate, storage is separate, so you can scale up compute as needed, you can scale up storage as needed, or scale up both. You can also do a lot of data sharing between business partners because cloud warehouses, data warehouses allow for that. Provisioning is instant, and you can bring people online very quickly. And also the data pipeline can handle both structured and unstructured data, and it's very fast and effective. Of course, security is a big concern when people move to the cloud. Most of the cloud data warehouses come with very robust security. There is all sorts of security models which are role-based, or they are based on certain security standards like HIPAA or PCI. All those things become very important to customers and are of concern to customers as they move to the cloud. But a lot of these cloud data warehouses have those built into that, and you don't have to worry about those. Next slide, please. So in the interim, a lot of companies have also built data lakes on premise using big data technology like Hadoop and building clusters and nodes on that. And typically they load a lot of data in there, and then they do analysis based on that. But again, because they're on-prem, you always have to provision for hardware. You have to always provision for capacity. Again, the challenge around data pipeline, scalability, and maintenance have started creeping into it because it's on-prem, and you still have to make sure that you have people managing it, people tuning it, and people constantly loading data into it from different sources, and maybe using different types of pipelines to load data. Next slide, please. So to kind of round it out altogether, the cloud data lakes can handle large volumes of unstructured data as well. Structured data is important, but in today's world, unstructured data is becoming equally, or if not more important. And there is a strong data pipeline that allows for things to be loaded much faster. The headaches of trying to program it, trying to get different languages to get data into your cloud data warehouse simply goes away because these are very streamlined and can handle a lot of the data movement pretty rapidly. And of course, storage costs go down quite significantly. Your infrastructure is very agile. You have the latest technologies, and compliance and regulatory requirements are met. And again, you can do geographic replication for higher resiliency with cloud data warehouses. Next slide, please. Some customers, who currently have data warehouses on-prem may consider a hybrid deployment where you have data that's currently in your data warehouse, and you want to not move everything at once. You can start with some new initiatives that you can use to build a cloud data warehouse or a cloud data lake. That way you can kind of minimize capital expenses for hardware and software, because you're doing all the new initiatives in the new cloud database, which is now connected to your traditional infrastructure as well. This way you can get new analytic solutions to market very quickly, which is what typically customers start with. They want to do applications that can give them results much faster. You can start getting control over the data part from security perspective, access and governance perspective. You are eliminating data silos, because now you're beginning to consolidate multiple data types into a single unified and a very highly scalable platform. And this allows you to maintain your current infrastructure, create the new infrastructure, and then as you have success with the cloud data lake or cloud data warehouse, you can start slowly moving your data warehouse on-prem and some of the data that's there into the cloud, and that way you're not kind of doing a big bang jump, and you can slowly move it and build a strong, robust, and extensible environment over time. And you can start with the smaller applications, move that, see success, and then move some of the larger applications. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Tarun. So I want to build on what Tarun said so far and start quantifying that and talk more about the economic benefits. We built an ROI model. You can see it in the link in your chat there. It's bit.ly/cloud data ROI, if you just want to follow along in more detail as we talk through this. So typically we see 4 major signs when it's time to move to a modern data infrastructure. These include it's time to set up yet another cluster to keep up with data demands. The second is that there's not enough technical staff to keep up with growing data requirements. The third is that the IT team is severely limiting query access to analysts across the company. And the fourth is that systems are prohibiting companies from accessing enough data and or recent enough data, and they just can't be agile as they want to be. So again, this ROI model has broken this out into these 4 groupings that we typically see. So I'm going to talk through each of these 4 over the next 4 slides. So next slide. So one of the main benefits of moving to a modern data infrastructure, as Tarun alluded, is that rather than investing so much in setting up yet another hardware cluster, you can get the benefits of a cloud infrastructure. And there's 3 main benefits that you'll see: storage, compute, and planning. What we heard from company Photobox is when they moved data from a legacy on-premises system to Amazon S3, they found that the storage was much more reliable and much cheaper. AWS S3, for instance, promises 11 nines of reliability around their storage. So you find that you get it becomes much less expensive because you can keep storage separate, because it could be unstructured. It's not necessarily mingled with the compute. You aren't paying nearly as much money on a per unit basis as well. Also, there's frequently good compression with these different cloud storage options. Take that all together, and with a standard typical Global 2000 company, you're talking about $1.2 million in annual savings. Huge savings there. That's based on having 1 petabyte of data in storage. If we move on to the compute side, what we heard from another company, Siemens Gas and Power, is that sometimes their cluster was overloaded and sometimes it was idle. That's the big issue with compute in the on-premises setting, is that it's really hard to manage the burst that you see there. And it's very, very inefficient and expensive to manage if you're building out a system to handle large bursts, whereas most of the time it's not being utilized. When you move to an on-demand elastic cloud system, it's there you gain all the efficiencies there of being able to have it turn up as necessary. So because of that, we see about $230,000 in savings for the average global 2000 company that's using about 8,000 compute query hours per month. And then moving on to capacity planning, if you've worked with database administrators before, you know that they spend a significant chunk of time doing capacity planning. When you move to the cloud with the elasticity of it, the on-demand nature, you almost don't need any capacity planning whatsoever. So we estimate about $180,000 in savings there. You add that all together, you're talking almost $1.7 million in savings in a single year just on the hardware side. So moving on to the next slide. So if we talk about the second major issue of not having enough technical staff to keep up with growing data demand, moving to a cloud data infrastructure can save a lot of technical staff time in three primary areas. One is ETL and data pipeline labor savings, another is maintenance cost savings, and the third is around automatic upgrades. So we'll first talk about the ETL side. Tarun alluded to this some, is that when you move to a cloud data infrastructure, modern data infrastructure, you don't have to move data as much. You can work with data in an unstructured way. You don't have to move from a transaction system to an operation system to a data warehouse. You can have fewer hops. And also you have really powerful tools available. The vendors out there like AWS Redshift, like Snowflake and so forth, they have a lot of their own data pipeline tooling. And there's a lot of great third-party tools out there as well, like Matillion, Fivetran, Talent, and so forth. And so by leveraging those tools and by not needing as many data hops with the unstructured data, you can save about $600,000 on average for a global 2000 company. On the maintenance side, we heard from Calibri Labs. Calibri Labs, when they had their legacy database up, they'd have to close it for several hours on a fairly regular basis for administrative upkeep before moving to a modern data warehouse. So there wasn't only kind of shutdown time of the system, but there's also the time required for tuning, for sharding, for data script backups and so forth that you don't need when you move to a modern data infrastructure. So add that together, that's about $230,000 for the average global 2000 company. And then there's the issue of upgrades. If you had Hadoop, Hive, and related software on premises, your team would have to update that themselves as the versions start advancing, the software versions. When you move to a cloud system, that all the software is updated behind the scenes. You don't have to worry about it at all. You don't have to shut down the system to upgrade. At least about $90,000 in savings annually. So you add that all up in terms of savings for the tech staff, that's about $920,000 per year. So moving on to the next slide. Then there was the issue of IT teams severely limiting query access to analysts across the company. I personally have lived this. When I worked at Cisco a few years back, I was working on an advanced analytics project there, and we would meet with the business intelligence, centralized business intelligence team to specify particular queries we would need from the centralized system at Cisco. So a few days or even a week later, we'd get the results back. And it was a very inefficient process. I mean, I know SQL, other people on the team do SQL. If we were able to access that data ourselves and do the queries ourselves, we'd have a much faster iterative process where we could find answers quickly, we could drill down to refine it and so forth. And there'd be much greater benefits for the company. But IT departments are afraid to currently with legacy systems to give access because one, they're doing the capacity planning around bursts and compute and so forth, and they really want to manage that. And secondly, they're worried about a bad query taking down the entire system. Those worries go away when you move to modern data infrastructure. You can set up instances that are provisioned just for the analysts to access, so they won't take down the rest of the system. And also, as we mentioned earlier, it's more on demand and elastic, so you don't have to worry about overburdening the system. So we estimate that just conservatively, if you're creating $10,000 to $20,000 greater analyst capacity around the ability to query, giving all these people the ability to gain this intelligence much faster, that's about $600,000 in value created for an average global 2000 company. In addition, you get the benefits much faster queries with modern data infrastructure. We haven't modeled that yet, but that would just be additive to the 600,000. So moving on to the next slide. So then there's the issue of when you need access to more data, fresher data, and you want your company to move in a more agile way around advanced analytics projects. So we heard from Equinox Fitness that when they move to a modern data infrastructure, they're able to ingest and integrate all sorts of customer data, from customer club visits to performance data on connected equipment, as well as their users' digital behavior. They couldn't access that all before. Also, there's more real-time data available, not just because of the ability to query faster and so forth, but the fact that you can move the data, there's better tooling, and there's fewer hops of moving the data to operation systems, or transaction operation systems, and so forth. So there's real savings there. And finally, faster time to production. That's the one piece we modeled here. We didn't model the other two lines, but we modeled faster time to production. And with that, you'll see about $720,000 in savings as companies are able to quickly get systems up, start working on it, be much more agile with their advanced analytics initiatives. Okay. And moving on to the next slide. So you take that all together, and there's tremendous savings when you move to a modern data infrastructure from a legacy system. We're talking about, for a global 2000 company, over $3 million in benefits on an annual basis. There are some costs, a lot of one-time costs. Initially, there's some costs around data movement, data transfer, some initial training for your staff, as well as some consulting fees if you have to bring in outside experts. But to add that all together, you're talking about a payback period of only just 2 months and a 3-year ROI above 1,000%. So it's one of the most impactful investments a business can make these days. And then moving on to the next slide. So we've created this model. It's available to the public. If you want to take it, customize it yourself, you can access it right there at that link. And if you want help customizing it or help with additional modern data infrastructure planning services, please contact us at cloudri@martechreview.com. And we have LumenData, a couple of great partners we can bring in to help out with specific needs if you're looking at particular technologies and want a broader understanding and so forth. So with that, I think that's well, next slide. I think we're going on to questions.
Yeah, yep. James, Tarun, that's great. The ROI calculations they're incredible. We have a few questions coming in here. One note on logistics. It looks like the handout link GoToWebinar was having difficulty processing that. So again, we will send out that the white paper with this research in it after this webinar. So apologies for that. One of the other questions here, James, how would a cloud data warehouse or a cloud data infrastructure enable data access to analysts? I think you covered this a little bit, but.
Oh, so yeah, so with the couple ways. With legacy systems, there were concerns about analysts bringing down the system because there wouldn't be separate instances available effectively all one instance. So if an analyst made a bad query, it could really close down the entire system. With the cloud-based system, modern data infrastructure, you could actually set up separate instances, provision those so that analysts isn't bringing down a centralized system. So that's one of the major benefits. Also, another reason why you can give more analysts access is because you don't have to worry about planning around bursts as much. So before you'd have to do a lot of planning around compute bursts, query bursts. With on-demand elastic systems, that's not a concern anymore.
Great. Second question here, and this could be for both of you. The economic benefits look compelling, which I think we just agreed with. How do I know if we will see a similar impact if we move? This is coming from somebody in an e-commerce retail environment.
So it's we created the ROI model we created is very, I'd say, generalized. There are so many different variables involved here in terms of what's your current system, what, exactly how's your data structured, what type of infrastructure you're looking to move to in terms of particular vendor and so forth. So yeah, we kind of took an average across the board in a very general way, but you can customize this model for your particular needs. And again, if you need professional help customizing it, please email us at cloudroi@martechreview.com, and we're happy to help out.
It looks like we got one or two more here. What trends are you guys seeing with brands moving and continuously updating their first-party customer data to a modern data warehouse platform? That could be for either.
I can take a crack at that one.
Sure.
So in terms of first-party data, one thing we've really been seeing a lot of is, a big growth in first-party data, really decreased reliance on third-party data now, especially with GDPR, CCPA, and other legislation taking effect. It's third-party data is becoming a little more risky. So we're seeing growth of tools like Segment for this reason, where customer data platforms, they're really allowing kind of simpler ingestion of first-party data. So that's one of the trends we're seeing. And obviously, as there's this general trend as well in terms of the growth of data, first-party data being a big part of that growth, and just needing to move to more modern data infrastructures to be able to support that growth in data. So hopefully that answers your question. Happy to drill down if there's anything more specific.
Great. And it looks like one more here. It looks like it's a logistical question. I pulled up the model and it's not allowing any modifications to the numbers. So I think that's just an issue. James, you want to explain how to use the model?
Oh, yeah. So we put the model in Google Sheets, and all you have to do, this should work, is you just copy the entire model and then paste it, kind of copy it, and then move it over, kind of duplicate it for your own purposes within Google Sheets. So yeah, and so when you duplicate the model, then you can start editing it. That's the easiest way to work with it.
Yeah, we thank you all for the engagement here. One quick note, just to quickly plug the host here. MessageGears, the only customer marketing platform built for today's enterprise. One of the reasons that we decided we wanted to host this webinar, and we find this data so compelling, is that we are the only marketing platform that actually sits on top of a modern data warehouse. So we have 3 core products. The one we're most known for is a cross-channel orchestration platform, and all of it is centered around sitting directly on top of wherever your customer data lives, whether that's in Snowflake or Redshift or BigQuery or what have you. Customer data is at the center, and that ensures consistent, accurate communication across all of your marketing channels. So that's modern data infrastructure, and companies moving to it are our sweet spot. That's exactly why this data was so compelling. The ROI model is compelling for us as well. So James, Tarun, that wraps up our webinar for today. Again, the model is available for customization here at bit.ly/cloud-data-ROI, and then you can contact Cloud ROI at martechreview.com for any other additional planning services. I want to thank everybody for attending today, particularly in these strange times for all of us. But James, Tarun, great data, really compelling stuff, and we appreciate your research. And we'll follow up with everybody afterwards with links and downloads. So
great, thanks, Will.
Have a great day, everybody. All right.
Thanks.